everybody. Welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. Today we have a very special show. We're going to be talking to Toinette Lippe, and we're going to be talking about her book, Nothing Left Over, A Plain and Simple Life. So welcome, Toinette.
Thank you.
So I was thinking about you as I was listening to the music as we were starting the show, and Toinette and I were talking moments before, and I was just thinking about how I feel like as a person in her 50s, I'm missing some key element that people in your generation have. It's embodied in this book. When I was reading through the way that you write, which is beautiful, and the way that the perspective that you have, it's so unique to, I think, probably the time in which you were raised. And I was wondering, when you look at today with everyone, on their phone and like walking like zombies, what runs through your mind?
Nothing runs through my mind. I just keep walking. I think it's interesting that you liked, how I wrote, because I think I'm one of the few people who write exactly the way I talk. Mm-hmm. And people who know me and already friends, and when they first read my book, they couldn't quite believe it because they could hear my voice talking to them in their heads. Because most people have a writing style and a talking style, but somehow I never got a writing style. I just type what I would say.
Yeah, and it's beautiful because there's a certain way of thinking and expressing yourself that is unique, I think, to probably your heritage, because you're from England, so it feels very English, and that it also feels like I have a dear friend who I'm not sure how old you are, but my dear friend is in her late 70s. And she writes me these emails that are just beautiful. They're graceful and they're full of life and energy and expression. And I contrast that to the emails that I write, which are horrifically short, blunt, directive. And it's just such a different way, I think. And I was curious, do you notice those differences? I mean, I know that you say that you don't notice, but what does it feel like to be operating in a world that's so different than necessarily the way that you were raised or how you were brought up?
Well, I think that when we write, we older ones, I'm 77, so...
Yes, around the age of my friend, yeah.
Yeah. We grew up writing letters, so we're still writing letters, even if it's via email. And it's a completely different thing from instant messaging.
Right.
Right. And so the modern generation is just getting down what's flitting through their head at that moment, whereas we're thinking about it and how to share what we're feeling and so we're coming from a different place.
Right. You don't have emojis. You didn't have emojis where you could put little smiley faces.
Not use emojis.
To talk about your feelings. That's interesting. So it's kind of
if I can't express it in my own words, I'm not going to draw it, as it were.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting because we live in a very different time than the one that you were raised. Do you think that we're missing something? When you see the 20-year-olds or the 30-year-olds or even the 50-year-olds running around and driving like, they're kind of... I feel like we're living the opposite of this. I think we're living complex, chaotic lives, not plain and simple lives. What do you think we're missing as a result of the kind of technological changes and just lifestyle changes?
I know that the only way I can manage to cope with life as it is now is by becoming aware as often as I can remember, which is not as often as I would like, of all of the space within me and without. Because this universe is a space. Whatever there is, whether it's the earth, the planets, my, my computer, whatever it is in space.
Mm.
And what we do is we human beings, for the most part, particularly the modern ones, we focus on what's in the space and are completely unaware of what surrounds us and connects us.
Mm.
So
Right.
when I'm sitting on my cushion in the morning, I try to open up to the space within me and without me. And
Mm.
if I become aware of the objects in the room, but they're in the space. What I think what we leave out is the space.
Mm-hmm. Because when we're rushing through life, it's like we miss the interconnectedness. This is how I'm interpreting what you're
Yes,
saying.
yes. That's
And
another way of expressing it.
and I do a meditation where they have you focus on the space. So it's a very kind of similar kind of meditation.
Yes.
And this gentleman who, Joe Dispenza, who I learned, he's focusing on consciousness, like the energy around
Yes.
us, because there's all this stuff that's rich around us. And if we don't focus on that, then we miss out on some other layer of reality that's happening. Is that what you meant when you were talking about
Yes.
the space
Yes.
outside?
Of course, if you become aware of the space, everything is in it.
Mm-hmm.
You're in it, I'm in it, and all of these people rushing along past us, they're all in it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just focus on like the one person in front of you, you lose not only all those other people, but the rest, all the space.
Mm. And what does it mean to focus on? And I don't have an experiential sense, so I'll just have to rely on your sense of what it means when you focus on the space inside of you.
Most of the day, I mean, to be really honest, when I sit on my cushion, I first become aware of the space around me
Mm-hmm.
and throughout the apartment, and if I'm lucky, out into the street. I don't remember to do that for most of the rest of the day, so I make sure to start out that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I turn the attention within, again, I become aware of all of the things that are going on inside me, the energy running through the digestion. Can I feel?
Okay, like a felt
I
experience.
feel the whole body.
Yes,
And
okay.
again, I don't remember to do that for the rest of the day, but I know that if I did, my body would probably work a lot better
Right.
if I was with it, not ignoring it. I think
Yeah.
we just ignore these things.
Yeah.
And I'm just as guilty as everyone else.
Oh, me too. I mean, it's one thing sitting on the cushion where you can feel the
Yes.
expansiveness of consciousness in the universe. And now I'm going to try to tune into the inside. I have a sense of, I do enough body work, and I just got out of a Feldenkrais class where you're just focusing on the minuscule aspects of your body. Like, where are your feet? Are they in the front or the back? When you're placing your weight. Where's your back? Are you leaning forward? Or are you leaning? What's happening to your breath? So I know that how that feels to expand into that. But I love the idea of expanding on the inside, because when you realize that there's spaciousness within you, like when you were talking about, I was tuning into the spaciousness within me. It just feels. All of a sudden I feel free.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because everything is in motion inside you,
Right.
and we don't even think about that.
Yeah. This is helping remember. Well, not. This is helping me think about, or I'm connecting the dots between what you're saying and a recent thing that I've been playing with. And I bet you actually have a lot of experiences based on reading your book, Nothing Left Over. You were talking about your own experience of leaving the publishing company and kind of being on this kind of like constant state of alertness, right? Which I assume publishing, you have deadlines and you have people and you've got phone calls and you've got manuscripts and you've got stuff being shipped in. It's this kind of utter chaotic, constantly like, okay, what's at this, and I would describe when I left Microsoft, where I used to work, which is a high-tech company. It's crazy. You get emails, blah, blah, blah. I would have this whack-a-mole approach. Something would come up, boom, resolve it, boom, resolve it, boom, resolve it. And I realized that I've come down a lot from that, but I'm still in that kind of mode of kind of go resolve it, go resolve it, go resolve it. And so It's that thing that you're talking about where there is no space. You're just constantly like grabbing at things that hit your attention versus, right? Because you're focusing on the object versus the
Yes.
space between those objects. How did you wind down from, I know that's been a while, because I know you wrote the book in 2002, is that right? When you first wrote the book?
I started in 2001.
2001. So it's been a while. So how did
Yeah.
you, I don't know if you can remember, how did you ramp down from that? And you're in New York City, which is the epitome of that energy.
Well, I didn't wind down. Here's something that nobody probably wants to hear.
Hmm.
But so I've been retired, quote unquote,
Yes.
since 2000. That is, I've been at home doing whatever I do and writing and painting and teaching. Um, and it seems to me it's just as frantic as being in an office.
Oh, no. I don't want to hear that.
I promise you that things are going to get better. I can
Right.
hardly keep up with everything that's going on
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
And I do try to not take on editorial projects. In 2007, I put on my website, I'm not editing anymore, and I'm giving myself full full time to painting.
Hmm.
And still, I get emails from people I don't know
Right.
saying, "I read what it said on your homepage, but I'm wondering if you would just read my manuscript and give me an evaluation." And I write back and I say, "What is it you don't understand about the word no?"
So it's
But then,
still like that.
from time to time, I get a request from a close friend or my teacher, and I try to say no, but I fail.
Right.
So I'm in the middle of two projects now. One where I'm the illustrator. This is almost finished.
Yes.
To a book that one of my authors wrote, and the other one is just beginning. My brush painting teacher, who is Korean,
Hmm.
has asked me if I would assist her to write a how-to book.
Mm. So
So
it continues. You figured you'd be
continues.
retired, but yet
Don't
you
look
have
forward
this
to
work.
retirement.
Okay, so you're still in the you're still working and keeping busy. And how do you maintain this simple and plain life in the midst of deadlines for the books that you have and the traffic in New York City and like when I go to New York City, I'm very sensitive, so I pick up the energy of New York. And I feel I get nervous and on guard, and I'm constantly like looking around, and I'm just anxiously rushing to one place or another, not even realizing where I'm rushing to or why I'm rushing. Period. But I pick up the energy, and I'm just I feel more frenetic and crazy and rushed, and like I have to go do something, but I don't even know what I'm trying to be doing. Do you feel that when you're in New York?
Um, well, I walk very fast. I always
Okay.
have. See, my mother walked very fast and talked very fast. So if I wanted to keep up with her, even when I was little, I had to do that. So I do walk fast, but um, for me, the secret is to do one thing at a time, to give it my full attention
Mm-hmm.
and not be distracted about all of the other things,
Mm-hmm.
because then you don't do it very well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and sometimes I don't remember some of the things that I need to, but what I've found is that so often, first thing in the morning, as I'm opening my eyes and remembering where I am, a little thought will float into my head, and I'll think, "Ah, of course, I have to do that. I had
Right.
forgotten entirely about it." So I've come to rely on the fact that um, thoughts like that arrive in the right moment.
Ah, that's interesting. So you don't have to keep a to-do list. If
Yes,
it's
well, you can keep a running list, but you have to remember to look at it. So,
right, right, versus just thinking if it's important, it will pop up to my consciousness
it
when
always
it needs to
does.
happen.
Yes,
That's an interesting way of navigating life.
like you say, one morning you wake up and you say, I need to renew my passport or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you haven't been thinking about the passport. After all, it's been 10 years, right?
Right. But somehow your consciousness is keeping track of
Yes.
it, and it knows it's almost this high degree of faith that you don't have to contain and hold all this stuff. It will kind of arise naturally when it's supposed to happen. So it's again, when I think again, I think about my life as a whack-a-mole life where I'm like going and like, trying to come up with a list and planning and organizing everything versus my husband. I was asking him, and I said, "What do you do?" And he's like, "I just hold everything. I hold everything." And I wait until something cries for attention because I assume when it's ready, it will cry for attention. But if it's not ready, it won't cry for attention. So I just hold it all and I'm watching as all this stuff goes by and I just hold it all and instead of reacting, I respond from a place of stillness, which is definitely what I got from your book. Nothing left over. I get the sense that you're responding from a place of stillness versus
Yes.
kind
Yes.
of. Is that how would you explain it?
Yeah, I would. I mean, there are so many calls on our attention all the time, and they come quicker and quicker. But as I mentioned in the book, you can actually only do one thing at a time. I mean,
Right.
people think they can do 6 things at a time, but their attention is flitting from one to the other, and it's fractured.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm.
best thing is to do as much of it as you can now, and then if something else calls, relinquish that,
Right.
the attention, and put it on something else. Don't try to do 3 things at a time.
Right.
You may not finish one of the things, but when you move to the next one to stop the milk boiling over on the stove, you need to give the milk your full attention.
Right. Exactly. Well, I just recognized something when you were describing that if you're trying to do 3 things at once, you're moving in 3 different directions at once, you miss the sense of really, it is about an attention. It probably takes longer to do those 3 things. You're probably not doing them as well as if you did them individually in a sequence versus together at the same time. But then I also think that if you're there and I was talking to my husband again, he said if something responds, I move a little bit towards it. And then I wait until something else responds and then I go to the next thing. But if you're responding to 3 things simultaneously, what happens is you're not fully still. You never stop, like you're saying. You don't stop. And you're not listening to what needs to truly be attended to in the level that it needs to be attended to because you're doing those 3 things at once.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't get that until this very moment. Thank you for. I've heard that a couple times. You know how sometimes you have to hear the same message 3, 4, 100 times, however, whatever, before you finally get it. All right, we have a bunch of questions from the listeners, so let's go look at those. So, because I'm not practicing, we're talking about this, and yet my attention is divided. I'm listening to you, and I see this long list coming. Okay, so, all right, so here's some questions. So, what happens when you don't go back to the things? Here's one of the listeners' questions. What happens when you don't get to go back to the things that you stopped doing to do something else? So
Well, if it's the milk, it boils over.
right.
You have to, somewhere in your brain is going to remember, at least you hope it is,
Right.
going to remember that it needs to do something. I mean, as you know, I only focused yesterday on the fact that in my calendar I had written down 1 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't realized it was 1 p.m. Pacific time.
Right.
Right. So it was lucky that it came into my mind that I should check this out and make certain that this was indeed the time. And then,
Right.
of course, by that time I had emailed 700 people to tell them to watch at 1 p.m.
Oh no.
So then I tried to correct it and say, no, it's 4 p.m. 4 p.m. if you're on the East Coast.
Right.
And but I was too enthusiastic about sending them all off, all these emails off, and that I had forgotten that, well, I hadn't totally forgotten, because it was, again, to answer your caller, at the back of my brain, I knew that you couldn't send more than 500 emails out, to 500 people in an hour. Because in 2007, the first time I sent out an email like that, when I created my website, Verizon immediately said, you've gone past the limit, and so you can't send any more emails for 24 hours.
Oh my gosh, any emails from your account?
Any emails, no outgoing emails, only incoming emails. So I knew that, but I wasn't keeping track. I thought I was spacing them out so that there wouldn't be more than 500 in a single hour, but I made a mistake last night.
Right.
And so I wasn't able to get any more emails. I won't be able to until 6 o'clock tonight. So what I'm trying to say here is, it did occur to me, it floated into my head that I had to be careful, but I wasn't careful enough.
Right, right. And even though that happened, right, I guarantee you that's not going to happen again. Right? I mean, so what? So you actually responded too quickly, and you weren't still, maybe that was what was supposed to happen. Right? So that you could share it on the show. I mean, who knows what, you don't really know why those things happen, but they still happen. So, what happens when you don't go back to the things? Well, they either boil over, you make a mistake, or, they come back again. Sometimes they just, what I've noticed is they come back again.
Yes, they do come back again.
And sometimes they don't need to be attended to and they go away. That's my husband's strategy. He's like, I'll just wait till attrition. Like, they'll just forget about it. And they'll just go away. But if the problem resolves itself. It's a strategy. All right, so another question. Okay. What happens, the listener clarified, it's not that you forgot to go back, but you have no time to get back to it.
Well, you can always make time for an emergency.
Right. Yeah, it must be that it's not a priority.
Yes, you have to prioritize things. I mean, if you were on your way to buy milk and you walked onto the street and there was an accident and you needed to assist that person who might die, the milk will have to wait.
Right, right.
So you actually don't, it doesn't feel as though you decide those things.
Right. Yeah.
You naturally move toward the thing that's the most important in that moment, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah. Life prioritizes itself based on need.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a couple of questions before that earlier on when we were talking about what it may be like, because even in the time period that you wrote the book, so from 2001 when you started leaving your job to 2014 when you updated the book, so much has changed. And the listener asked, would you rather things be like they were back in the day or how they are now?
Well, number one, we don't have a choice.
Right.
Number two, there is only the present moment. And you can be present now or not. You can be so distracted, you're not even present now.
Right.
So I think that these would you like or not like, I can't answer that because you don't have that choice.
Yeah.
The choice is to be present at this moment. I mean, right now, I'm looking at you and we're speaking. I'm answering your question. And outside my window, there are two sparrows courting one another. I haven't looked up, but I can hear them.
I can too.
So I could look over there, but there's a priority here.
Right.
I have this chance to speak with you and to try to respond to listeners.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think if the simplest way of how I would respond to that is loving what is. Byron Katie has this idea of loving what is, right?
Yes.
I mean, you can, yes, maybe it was great and you miss aspects of it and are nostalgic about it, but now you're here. And it's about loving what is now, even if it's so different than before.
I take a slightly different view from her.
Yeah.
I would like to be able to love what is, but I can't always manage it.
Yeah.
But I do know that whatever is right here in front of me is the present moment, and one has to address that. One has to be present with it.
Right.
Whatever emotion one may be feeling.
Okay, so there's kind of
I
a
can't
loving.
always love it. But
Yeah,
I
it's like
can
loving
always-
what the situation is and then loving
Yes.
what you're doing at the very moment that you're doing it, whether it's writing a letter or talking to me or, listening to the sparrows in a fleeting, moment. It's just loving that specific moment. Okay, the listener asked back, what things would you like to still be from back then, like letter writing or other values that you see were kind of missing?
I don't know because I don't think about them.
You don't?
Because I find my life is so full of wonderful things, even if I'm not in a musical, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That I don't miss the other things
yeah.
that used to happen because there's all kinds of wonderful things happening now.
Yeah, I watched a Hitchcock movie, and I watch Grace Kelly, and I look at people who were in in that era in which you were raised, the 1950s, and there's a certain amount of elegance and decorum and beauty in which people express themselves. And as a person watching that video, thinking, wow, and even the women, when the women are talking, they're truly in their feminine power. I feel like when I think of myself or I look at other people of this generation, I don't know. All I can say is there's a lack of grace and
You mean now
beauty.
there's a lack of
Yeah,
grace?
there's a lack of
Well,
grace and beauty.
both you and I are talking about 3 times as fast as Grace Kelly.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's become natural to us.
Right.
We don't talk fast, people's attention will go somewhere else.
Right. They're like, are they asleep? What's happening to them? Right. But yeah, Grace, you'd watch those films and she'd be like, oh,
Yes.
I'm wondering whether you would get me my jacket over there. And you're like, oh my God. But she does it in this way where you're like, of course I will. Like, if I were a woman or a man, I'd get her jacket. There's a sense of like, that was the most important thing at that moment, her jacket. And she says it in this graceful, simple, slow way. And I do think that when I look back at that era, I think that there is something that we're missing as we're rushing around, texting people and running from one thing to another. I think it's the thing that I feel like is in this book. It's a sense of stillness and presence and grace that I think we are missing. But I don't know, maybe you don't. I know you don't think that way, but that's at least how I feel when I read your book. I'm like, wow, I'm not like this.
But we don't, nowadays, you and I and everybody else, we don't stand there or sit there and say, would you get my jacket? Because we know they're not going to get our jacket for us.
Get it yourself, lady. What's wrong with you?
We get up and get it slowly or quickly, but we get our own jacket.
Yeah. I know we're in a different era, but I do think there's something that's missing from that. Okay, so here's another person that's related to that. I hear keeping busy helps you keep going. Do you feel this is true that so you had these 2 offers to publish a book, and even though you wanted to retire, you're busy again. Do you think it helps you keep that helps you in some way to keep busy?
No, because what I would like to do is to be still. I started work when I was 17. I didn't have a chance to go to college. Mm-hmm. And I've been working ever since. So that's 60 years I've been working. And I would rather be playing. What I felt when I quit my job on the day my son started work in 2000, I felt that I had worked so hard and so long all my life that I had not really learned how to play, and my aim was to learn how to play. And then I started studying brush painting, which was, had no art background. Mm-hmm. And was a huge amount of work, and it still is. And what I'm aiming for is the same. I want my brush to play. I want to get to the point where I'm not working at it. So I wish I did not have this much work because, but I was brought up to believe first you do your work and then what's left over you have time to play. But by that time you're often exhausted.
So what have you learned about?
I thought retirement meant that you would have time to play.
Right.
And it's just people still come to you needing a lot of work.
Okay, so what have you learned when you're in your sweet spot of like, oh, I'm in a place of play? What are the things that you do to cultivate that sense of play?
I haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah.
Honestly, because I can come to a moment where I've finished a particular job, and for instance, I say to myself, I'm going to go for a walk. I live close to Riverside Park on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and I'm lucky enough to be part of a community garden, and I have a little plot, 8 by 10.
Oh, that's in the big plot. That's a big
well,
plot. Anyhow.
Yes. So I go out there to contemplate it, and right now is the best time of year.
Yeah.
Beautiful spring flowers coming up. But when I get there, I see weeds are growing, something needs propping up, the little compost is necessary, the leaves are all over it. So I said to her, and I'd start working in the garden.
Oh, wait, so you bring, even though gardening could be a plaything, you bring it into a state of work when you're playing.
Yes. It's very hard to drop old habits.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was taking a class. It was it was a class on Myers-Briggs. And they were talking, they said, I want you to line up in the rooms. All the people in the class are probably 20 different participants. I want you to line up in a row. There is someone said, your boss said you have a job that needs to be done in a week from now. Your best friend says, I'm in town and I would really like to go, explore some fun things. And they're doing something that you've always wanted to do. Let's say, hike in the Cascades. So what would you do? And it was so interesting because there's a group of people who said, I need to get my work done. I'll get my work done and then I'll play. And then this other group that said, I'll play and figure out how to get my work done. But it was literally weighted in between these two different places. Sadly for me, I'm like you. I was like, I need to get my work done because that was it was my Chinese upbringing. Like you first need to get your work done, then you can play. But then the sense of work never really ever dissipates, whether you're retired or not.
It's very hard to retire your modus operandi.
Yes.
I mean, if you spent your life doing things one way, it's very hard to relinquish that.
Right. Yeah.
It's still in your back.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So it's when you're retiring, you're no longer working, but that doesn't mean you retire all your habits and ways of conducting yourself in life. And that was part of it, sounded like was part of what you're exploring in your book, nothing left over.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried to be very honest in the book, because people think, oh, well, if you're doing a spiritual practice, you're probably going to be perfect, right?
Right.
It's not like that.
I don't think it's like that for anyone. I mean, people who have whether I talk to Sharon Salzberg or Lama Surya, it's like everyone you're still human.
Yes.
So you're going to have those human-oriented issues regardless of how spiritual or how many hours you meditate. It still happens, I think. So then someone wrote, so does that mean we can't break the habits? How would you respond to that?
I'm not saying can't, but I'm saying it's the longer you've had the habit, the more difficult it is to let it go.
Yeah. You
can, in the moment, let go of your habit.
Yep.
But you have to remain in the moment, and we keep being distracted.
Right.
Yes, it's possible. It's just not probable.
Well, and I think it's hard, again, I'll quote Joe Dispenza, and I don't know if I'm getting this completely accurate, but he said, by the time we're 12, our unconscious patterning has been hard baked into our brains. Like 93% of our, and I don't know, again, these numbers are approximate, 93% of our unconscious behaviors are hard baked. And so I almost think of it as you're driving down the road for point A and B. And if you've driven a straight line each time, like each time you go and you repeat that habit over and over and over again, you're like the groove is just getting deeper and deeper in that road that you travel. So I think the only way to break a habit is to recognize what road that you're driving on and to drive a different path, right? You have, which means that you have to choose to go a different path. Yes. And to recognize that you've just driven a straight line the whole time. And those things sound like, oh, well, that seems easy. But those are, I think, for me, the two hardest things about breaking a habit. One, acknowledging you have the habit. And then two, forcing yourself to drive a different pattern when you're going from point A to B. At least that's my thoughts on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, until you've recognized what the habit is, you can't get any distance from it.
Right.
Right. You put it in perspective once you actually can see clearly enough. But it's hard to let go of the reins.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that your goal that you said and nothing left over was to an exploration on how to live so that supply does not exceed demand or consumption, and how to share whatever you may have with everyone else, not holding anything back in a miserly way, and how to trust that the universe will respond to you in the same way that you respond to it. So your whole book is an exploration on that, but as we close out in the next 7 minutes, what are some thoughts that you want to leave listeners with?
That's a tall order.
Or maybe...
I think that perhaps the most important thing that I've learned in my life is that one should, whatever is right in front of you, whether it's a person in great need or the kitchen sink that's stopped up or whatever it is, you give it your full attention. Mm-hmm. And you don't have bits of wisps of your mind going off on the side, thinking what else you might be doing. Mm-hmm. I mean, if there's an accident in front of you, you wouldn't think twice. You would just help.
Right.
I was walking along the street the other day, and somebody was carrying a heavy box, a young woman, and she tripped, and 4 of us ran toward her. Mm. I mean, that's the only person. Everybody does this naturally. Mm-hmm. But we don't do it as often as we might, because that was an emergency, and we don't think whatever we're doing is an emergency. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying that it is, that you were talking about religion a moment ago. We need to be devoted to what is right there in front of us. Mm-hmm. That's the important thing.
Right.
Devotion.
Right. Yeah, and the reason why I was talking, and thank you for reminding me because I forgot where we left off, I was saying that in some ways materialism and capitalism is like a religion that we have unknowingly followed. It's a cult. We're part of it, and we don't even recognize that we're part of it. And part of what, to me, this helped me do is to recognize, like, wow, I don't think that we even recognize that we're part of the cult and that we're following the beliefs and behaviors of it. And it's completely the antithesis of plain and simple and some of these ideas that you're talking about. So thank you for the segue. Any other thoughts about, what you want listeners to take away from? So what I just heard you say is to just be completely present. How we are when there is an emergency, where there's no doubt in our mind or where we need to focus, to just be completely present. And that's key. I think it's also key to living simple.
If you're completely present, you don't even have to have an idea of what has to be done. You just have to be present, and it will happen. Mm-hmm. We don't have to think at that moment. We just move toward it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's not complicated.
Right. hard to remember, right? Because of the habits that we may have grooved
Yes.
into. But it's not a simple, it's not a simple, it's not a hard idea to grasp. It's easy to understand,
Yes.
much harder to do. Any other words of wisdom on how one being present? Any other thoughts?
Um, well, I don't know whether it was Bert or Ernie who used to sing, "Be yourself, you can't be anyone else."
Yes.
I
So,
think so often we try to be someone else,
hmm
and we just need to be ourselves.
hmm
Um, that's enough.
yeah.
But we need to be here to be ourselves, right?
Right. If we're
As,
so busy reacting to everything and responding, we're probably not being ourselves. We're being some image of what
yes,
someone wants us to be. Right?
yes.
Yeah.
So remember the Muppets.
And remember the Muppets. I love it. All right, folks, we've been talking to Toinette Lippe, and we've been talking about her book, Nothing Left Over. And you've updated this. When you updated this book recently, what compelled you to update it? You've updated in 2014 and 2015. What were the aspects you wanted to update with this book?
Well, I added an afterword
Hmm
to it. It seems odd to me always to add forewords
Right.
when it's being added afterward. So I added an afterword, and it was just a few pages of things that I felt had happened since it was initially published.
Right.
Um, and so that's what I did.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, well, I hope that it resuscitates a movement more towards this way of living. I'm trying to live in this way. Like you said, it's very hard because I have followed a completely different set of pattern. The religion of capitalism and materialism has been long baked into my life, and so it's been really nice and refreshing to see just kind of a different way of navigating the world. So thank you so much for being on the show.
I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed meeting you, and I'm happy that you found something of value there.
Yes, thank you.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show and love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.